Cedar Rapids, Iowa, March 15th, 2019. Robert Mitchell sat at his dining room table staring at 7 black and white photographs spread across the worn oak surface. 7 men and D and C. 7 faces that looked remarkably like his own. His father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, his uncles, his cousin. Every single one of them dead. Every single one of them killed by a heart attack. Every single one of them between the ages of 60 and 65. And today, March 15th, 2019, Robert Bob Mitchell had just turned 60 years old. He picked up the photograph of his father, Edward Mitchell, taken on his own 60th birthday in 1995. The resemblance was unsettling. Same square jaw, same thinning gray hair, same blue eyes. Edward was smiling in the photo, celebrating with family at a backyard barbecue, completely unaware that he had exactly 2 years and 4 months left to live. The massive heart attack would come suddenly, without warning, collapsing him in his garage on a Tuesday morning while working on his Buick. Bob's hands began to tremble as he held the photograph. He could feel his own heart beating in his chest, steady, rhythmic, reliable. For now. But for how much longer? This is the true story of a man who spent 5 years waiting to die, and how he discovered that the deadliest curse in his family wasn't written in their DNA. It was written in their fear. Bob had spent his entire adult life knowing about the Mitchell family pattern. Everyone in Cedar Rapids knew about it. It was the kind of thing people whispered about at funerals and family reunions. The Mitchell men don't make it past 65. Neighbors would say with sad, knowing nods. Heart disease runs in that family something terrible, and the statistics were impossible to ignore. His great-grandfather Thomas, dead at 63, heart failure, 1954. His grandfather Harold, dead at 61, massive coronary, 1972. His father Edward, dead at 62, heart attack, 1997. His uncle Frank, dead at 64, cardiac arrest, 2001. His uncle Joseph, dead at 60, heart attack while driving, 2005. His mother's brother Raymond, dead at 65. Heart disease complications, 2010. His cousin Daniel, dead at 62, heart attack at the gym, 2015. 7 men. All Mitchell family males. Why? All dead from heart problems. All between 60 and 65. The odds weren't just bad. They felt like destiny. Bob had been a careful man his entire life. He'd never smoked. His mother had forbidden it after watching tobacco kill her husband. He'd maintained a healthy weight through his years as an elementary school principal, walking the hallways and staying active with students. He'd married Linda, a registered dietitian, who'd kept their family eating well for 38 years. He'd retired comfortably at 58, looking forward to traveling, spending time with grandchildren, finally relaxing after decades of work. But at his 60th birthday party, when his mother placed that photograph album on the table and opened it to his father's 60th birthday picture, something shifted in Bob's mind. He looked at his father's face, frozen in time, smiling, alive, celebrating, and suddenly saw his own future, or rather, the lack of one. What Bob didn't know in that moment was that the fear that gripped his heart would become more dangerous than any genetic condition he might have inherited. Because while genetics can predispose, fear and stress can guarantee the very outcome you're trying to avoid. The first month after his 60th birthday, Bob tried to ignore the creeping anxiety. He went about his normal routine, Morning walks with Linda, volunteer reading at the local library, woodworking in his garage, Sunday dinners with his daughter, Jennifer, and her 2 kids. But the thought was always there, lurking. These 60. 60. You're 60 now. The countdown has started. Oh, I know. He found himself pressing his hand against his chest at random moments, feeling for his heartbeat. Was it too fast? Too slow? Was that normal? Every time he climbed the stairs, he paused at the top, breathing heavily, wondering if this was it, the beginning of the end. Linda noticed first. "Bob, you just checked your pulse 3 times during dinner. What's wrong?" "Nothing," he lied, pulling his fingers away from his wrist. "Just keeping track." "Of what?" He couldn't answer. "How do you explain that you're counting the beats until your heart stops?" By the 2nd month, Bob had purchased an Apple Watch specifically for its heart monitoring features. He wore it constantly, checking the display dozens of times per day. Resting heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Was that good? He Googled it obsessively. Normal range, 6,100. Okay. He was okay. For now. But then a notification would pop up. Elevated heart rate detected, 110 BPM. Bob would freeze in panic. Why was it elevated? Was this the beginning? He'd sit down immediately, taking deep breaths, pressing his hand to his chest, feeling the rapid thumping against his palm. Linda found him like that one evening, sitting rigid on the couch, staring at his watch, breathing in controlled counts. "Bob, this has to stop. You're making yourself sick." "My heart rate was 110, he said quietly. "That's not normal. You were carrying groceries up from the basement. Of course your heart rate went up. That's what hearts do. They respond to activity." But Bob couldn't hear the logic anymore. The fear had taken root. Here's what was happening in Bob's body that he didn't understand. Chronic anxiety and stress triggered the release of cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that, when constantly elevated, actually damage cardiovascular health. By obsessing over his heart, by living in constant fear, Bob was creating the exact conditions: elevated blood pressure, increased heart rate variability, inflammation, that could lead to heart disease. The irony was brutal. His fear of dying from a heart attack was making a heart attack more likely. By month 4, Bob had visited his cardiologist, Dr. Patterson, 3 times. Each visit involved extensive testing: EKG, echocardiogram, stress test, blood work. Each visit came back with the same results: normal, healthy, no signs of coronary artery disease. Cholesterol slightly elevated, but nothing alarming. Blood pressure a bit high, but manageable. "Bob, your heart is fine," Dr. Patterson said during the 3rd visit, his patience wearing thin. "You're 60 years old and you have the cardiovascular system of a healthy 60-year-old man. There's nothing wrong." "But my family." "I know about your family. I've looked at their medical records, the ones we could access. Bob, I'm going to tell you something important, and I need you to hear it. Your father smoked 3 packs a day." Dr. Patterson leaned forward, making eye contact. "You are not them. You've never smoked. You're active. You eat well. You get regular checkups. Medicine has advanced dramatically. The statins you're taking didn't exist when your father was alive. The blood thinners, the blood pressure medications, the monitoring technology." Bob wanted to believe him. He truly did. But that night, lying in bed, he could feel his heart beating in the darkness. Steady, reliable. For now, how many beats did he have left? If his father died at 62, that was 2 years. 2 years meant roughly 63 million heartbeats. He was counting down. What the is audience hour? 62,999,999. 62,999,998. 62,999,997. He didn't sleep that night, or many nights after. By his 61st birthday in March 2020, Bob had changed dramatically. Linda watched with growing alarm as her husband, once vibrant and engaged, slowly withdrew from life. He stopped volunteering at the library. Too much stress, he claimed. He quit his woodworking. Lifting heavy wood might strain his heart. He declined invitations to golf with his old principal colleagues. Exertion, heat, stress. He even stopped playing with his grandchildren. What if he had a heart attack in front of them? But here's the cruel reality Bob was creating. By avoiding physical activity out of fear, he was actually weakening his cardiovascular system. The human heart, like any muscle, needs regular exercise to stay strong. By living like an invalid, Bob was guaranteeing the very weakness he feared. Why? The physical changes were striking. In 18 months, Bob had lost 15 pounds, not from exercise, but from stress and poor sleep. His hair, which had been a distinguished salt and pepper, had gone completely white. His posture had deteriorated. He walked with a slight hunch, as if protecting his chest. His hands developed a tremor. Dark circles formed under his eyes. Linda found him one morning, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, shirt off, staring at his chest. "What are you doing, Bob?" "Looking for signs," he said quietly, "checking if anything's changed." "Signs of what?" "Death." Death. That word hung in the air like a physical presence. Linda had reached her breaking point. "Robert Mitchell, listen to me. You are not dying, but you're not living either. You're somewhere in between, and it's destroying you. It's destroying us." Bob turned to face his wife, and for the first time he saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear for his heart, but fear of losing him to this obsession. "Linda, I don't know how to stop. Every morning I wake up surprised I'm still here. Every night I go to bed wondering if I'll wake up. My father was 62 when he died. I'm 61. The clock is ticking." "Then let's find out the truth," Linda said firmly. "Really find out, not just doctor visits. Let's research. Let's understand. Let's look at your father's actual medical records, your grandfather's death certificate, everything. Because right now, you're living in fear of ghosts, Bob. Let's face them." That conversation marked the turning point. Because information, real, factual, documented information, is the most powerful weapon against fear. Bob had been living with assumptions, with family legends, with whispered warnings. He'd never actually investigated the truth. Over the next 2 months, Bob and Linda became medical detectives. They requested death certificates from the county. They contacted hospitals for records. They interviewed family members who remembered details. They hired a genealogist to help fill in gaps. What they discovered changed everything. Edward Mitchell, Bob's father. Death certificate stated acute myocardial infarction. But the medical records Linda obtained through their family doctor revealed more. Edward had been a 3-pack-a-day smoker since age 15. He'd been 80 pounds overweight. He'd worked as a CEO of a manufacturing company, routinely working 70-hour weeks under intense stress. His cholesterol had been 310, dangerously high. But he'd refused medication, claiming pills are for weak men. He'd had chest pains for 3 years before his fatal heart attack, but never told anyone, never saw a doctor. His last physical exam had been in 1982, 15 years before his death. Harold Mitchell, Bob's grandfather, death certificate from 1972. The records were sparse, but family interviews revealed he'd worked in a chemical factory for 35 years, smoked 2 packs daily, and considered doctors a waste of money. He'd had high blood pressure. Family members remembered his face being constantly flushed, but had never been treated. Medical care in rural Iowa in the 1960s-70s was basic at best. Thomas Mitchell, Bob's great-grandfather, records from 1954 were even more limited. He died of heart failure at age 63. But context mattered. This was before cholesterol was understood, before blood pressure medication existed, before cardiac care units, before CPR, before emergency cardiac care. A heart attack in 1954 was almost always fatal. The uncles, the cousin. The pattern repeated. Heavy smokers, obesity, untreated hypertension, diabetes, refusal to seek medical care, and crucially, this was before modern preventive cardiology existed. What Bob discovered was that his family hadn't died from genetic heart disease. They'd died from the lifestyle and medical knowledge of their era. Every single one of them had multiple preventable risk factors that in 2021 would be aggressively managed. Why? But the most shocking discovery came from a genetic test. On Linda's insistence, Bob ordered a 23andMe DNA test with full health screening. The results took 4 weeks. When they arrived, Bob opened the envelope with shaking hands, expecting confirmation of his doom. Genetic risk for coronary artery disease, moderate, 48th percentile. Bob read it 3 times. Moderate, not high, not elevated. Moderate, average. He was at the 48th percentile, meaning 52% of people had higher genetic risk than he did. He immediately called Dr. Patterson. How is this possible? My entire family. Bob, I told you, genetics is only part of the story. Your family's heart disease was multifactorial: smoking, obesity, untreated hypertension, lack of medical care, and yes, some genetic predisposition. Dr. Patterson pulled up Bob's recent test results on his computer. Look at these numbers, Bob. Your blood pressure is now 145/95. A year ago, it was 120/80. Your resting heart rate used to be 68. Now it's 80. The doctor leaned back in his chair. Let me ask you something. If you could guarantee you'd live to 80, would you spend the next 20 years the way you've spent this past year? Terrified, isolated, waiting for death? Bob was silent. Or would you want to actually live those 20 years? That night, Bob couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from anger. Anger at himself. Anger at the wasted time. Anger at letting fear steal his life while he was still alive. Urgency. We shall warranty. He'd outlived his grandfather. He was 1 year away from outliving his father. And instead of celebrating that he'd broken the pattern, he'd spent the last 18 months dying of fear while his heart kept beating strong. The next morning, Bob made a decision. He was going to fight. Not his heart, his fear. He started with small steps, literally. That first morning, he walked to the end of his driveway. His heart rate went up to 95. He didn't panic. He breathed. He walked back. The next day, he walked to the mailbox. Oh, then around the block. Then 2 blocks. His Apple Watch buzzed with elevated heart rate warnings. He ignored them. Linda noticed immediately. You're outside. I'm walking, Bob said. I'm done hiding from my own heartbeat. But Bob knew he needed more than just exercise. He needed to understand, to fight this fear with knowledge and strategy. He made a list, a battle plan. Wins the battle plan. Bob's tactics for conquering death fear. Tactic 1. Information over imagination. Bob created a spreadsheet because he was a retired principal and spreadsheets made sense to him. One column, his father's risk factors. Another, his own. Side-by-side comparison. Edward, 3 packs, day smoking for 45 years. Bob, never smoked. Edward, 290 pounds, 5'10". Bob, 170 pounds, 5'10". Edward, sedentary job, no exercise. Bob, active career, regular walking. Edward, terrible diet, fast food daily. Bob, healthy diet for 40 years. Edward, refused medical care. Bob, annual checkup since age 30. Edward, refused cholesterol medication. Bob, on statin preventively. Edward, untreated high blood pressure. Bob, monitored, managed. The visual comparison was stark. Bob wasn't his father. Not even close. Tactic 2. Refrain the fear. With his therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, Bob learned cognitive reframing QI. Every time he thought I'm going to die at 62, he forced himself to counter it. My father died at 62 from preventable causes I don't have. I'm different. Tactic 3. Exposure therapy. Instead of avoiding exercise, Bob joined cardiac rehabilitation, a supervised program where heart patients exercise while monitored. Being around people who'd survived actual heart attacks and were thriving changed his perspective. These people had damaged hearts and were living fully. His heart was healthy, and he'd been acting like an invalid. Tactic 4. Purpose over fear. Bob started volunteering again, but this time at the hospital's cardiac rehabilitation center, helping new patients understand their journey. Teaching others helped him teach himself. Tactic 5. Mindfulness. ND. Bob learned meditation. Not New Age mysticism, but practical breathing exercises that lowered his cortisol, reduced his resting heart rate, and gave him tools to manage panic when it arose. Tactic 6. Social connection. Bob joined a support group called Family Disease Fear. 8 people, all dealing with genetic anxiety. Hearing others' stories normalized his own and taught him he wasn't alone or crazy. Tactic 7. Physical proof. Every 3 months, Bob got comprehensive blood work and cardiac monitoring. Each result showing improvement became ammunition against his fear. Numbers don't lie. The transformation took time. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, but slowly, month by month, Bob reclaimed his life. By his 62nd birthday, March 2021, Bob had reached the age his father died. The date carried weight, but not terror. He spent it hiking with Linda and his grandchildren at Palisades Kepler State Park, climbing trails his father never could have climbed at any age. His daughter Jennifer pulled him aside at his birthday dinner. "Dad, you look 10 years younger than you did 2 years ago." And the medical data confirmed it. Dr. Patterson called it reverse aging. Blood pressure, 125/80, normal. Resting heart rate, 70, excellent. Cholesterol, 185, optimal with medication. Stress hormones, normal range. Sleep quality, good. AKD, perfect. Weight, 175, gained back healthy muscle. Energy, high. Bob, your biological age is reversing. Dr. Patterson explained. 2 years ago, stress had aged your body. Now that stress is managed, your body is healing. This is documented science. Stress ages you, peace heals you. When a crucial lesson Bob learned, you can't control how long you'll live, but you can control how well you live. And ironically, living well, managing stress, staying active, maintaining purpose, nurturing relationships is exactly what extends life. The months rolled by. 63, 64. Each birthday became a small celebration, a quiet acknowledgement that he'd outlasted one more family member's timeline. But the fear diminished. Knowledge had replaced terror. Action had replaced paralysis. By 65, Bob had become something unexpected, an advocate. He gave talks at the local senior center about health anxiety. He mentored newly retired men struggling with mortality fears. He turned his 5-year nightmare into a mission to help others. On March 15, 2024, Bob turned 65 years old, older than any male Mitchell in recorded family history. His birthday party wasn't somber. It was joyful, loud, wine, full of grandchildren running around, friends laughing, Linda beaming. His grandson Jake, now 12, approached him with a question that carried more weight than the boy knew. "Grandpa Bob, are you still scared? Like before?" Bob knelt down. His knees protested a bit, but they worked fine, and looked his grandson in the eye. "Jake, I'm going to tell you the truth. Yes, I'm still scared sometimes. Fear of death, that's human. That's normal, but I don't let it run my life anymore." "Need your waist throw? How'd you stop?" "I learned the difference between being afraid and being controlled by fear. Fear says, be careful. That's useful. But terror says, don't live. That's poison." Bob tapped his chest. "My heart's been beating for 65 years, over 2 billion times. It's pretty good at its job, so I decided to trust it and live while it's still beating." Jake thought about this. "Did your family have bad hearts?" "No, buddy. They had bad information, bad habits, and bad luck with timing. They lived before medicine could help them. But I have good information, good habits, and good luck with timing. I live in an era where doctors can fix things." "So you're gonna live forever?" Bob laughed. "No, nobody does. But I'm going to live well until I don't. There's a big difference." That evening, Bob and Linda sat on their back porch, watching the sun set over the Iowa cornfields. The sky was painted orange and pink, the air warm with approaching spring. "You did it," Linda said quietly, taking his hand. "You beat it." "Beat what?" "I'm not immortal, Lynn. Not death. Fear. You beat the fear that killed your father and grandfather and all of them just as surely as heart disease did. Because they were so scared, they never took care of themselves. They smoked and drank and ignored symptoms, because acknowledging vulnerability was..." Bob squeezed her hand. "I had help. You wouldn't let me give up on living." "No," Linda said firmly. "I wouldn't." Bob's Apple Watch buzzed gently. Heart rate, 68 BPM. Resting point. Calm. Undeary. Yeah. All new. I'd say. Day don't see. All right. Right there. He glanced at it and smiled. 2 billion heartbeats down. Anyway, however many were left, he was going to make them count. Because Bob Mitchell had learned the most important lesson of all. The curse wasn't genetic. The curse was fear itself. And fear, unlike genetics, is something you can choose to overcome. What about? 3 years later, at age 68, Bob Mitchell runs a support group for men dealing with family disease anxiety. He's healthy, active, engaged with life. His last cardiac screening showed a cardiovascular system in excellent condition for his age. His doctors jokingly call him the man who scared himself into perfect health, because his obsessive attention to his heart, once redirected from fear into constructive action, made him hyper-compliant with every preventive measure. He keeps that old family photo on his desk. His father at 60, smiling, unaware. But now when Bob looks at it, he doesn't see his future. He sees his father's past, a past shaped by different knowledge, different habits, different choices. Bob chose differently, and it made all the difference.